Welcome everyone, Costin here with a discussion guide for the Protection Paladin in World of Warcraft Dragonflight. I've played the Paladin ever since Retail Burning Crusade, since the early days of Retail Burning Crusade, and I've played in every single expansion with the exception of Battle for Azeroth, where I just didn't play WoW. I also played quite a bit of Shadowlands, Mythic Plus, and Raiding, at least within the first season. Now, how do I feel about the Paladin in Dragonflight compared to Shadowlands? Well, I think largely when we're thinking about output, survivability, all that kind of stuff, it's generally the same, though you do have a bigger toy box of cooldowns in particular in Dragonflight. But one of the key differences is your healing output, or at least the opportunities to do a lot of healing through Word of Glory have been significantly increased, tied to cooldowns, tied to certain talents, tied to the fact that we no longer have borrowed power with the Covenants or Legendaries. In fact, we have a lot of the effects from both Covenants and Legendaries put into the talent tree, so we have access to a great deal of power that was split off, so to speak, in Shadowlands. Now that's great. It does make the class significantly more powerful than it was before, at least with respect to that. But as a Paladin, there are 5 main priorities you have, be it talents, gearing, playstyle. And these are, first, survivability, rather said effective HP. Now, effective HP is the combination of stamina, your HP, combined with things like armor, potentially block, though block is a chance to reduce damage, but block could be counted there if you want to do some calculations, like obviously you would have to consider the chance there. But anything that can reduce damage passively, or things that you can have 100% of the time active. For instance, there is a talent in the protection tree that gives you 10% armor for Shield of the Righteous. 10% additional armor. So that is something that you would count as part of your effective HP. So that's one thing. Then you've got your healing, largely through Word of Glory and associated talents. For instance, one really potent effect is Light of the Titans in the protection tree, which gives you a heal over time effect on Word of Glory. Very, very powerful. And increased by 50% if cast on yourself. Now, this plus Word of Glory plus Hand of the Protector can give you a ridiculous amount of healing done on both yourself and on your party. So you've got effective HP, healing, cooldowns, be it damage cooldowns, healing cooldowns, holy power cooldowns, or ability usage cooldowns like Bastion of Light, which gives you free cast of Shield of Righteous or Word of Glory for free, basically. The next 3 of them for free. And then, of course, things like Holy Avenger, which triples your holy power generation. So you either have damage cooldowns or survival cooldowns, all those kind of things. So effective HP, healing, cooldowns, utility, things like Cleanse, Blessing of Protection, Blessing of Freedom, Blessing of Protection, Blessing of Sacrifice, interrupts like Rebuke, stuns like Hammer of Justice, Blinding Light, Repentance, etc. And finally, of course, you have damage. Now, out of these 5 priorities, what are the most important? Or rather, which is the least important? I will have to argue that damage is the least important. Now, damage is not irrelevant, and you shouldn't ignore it completely. But what I'm focusing on when I'm doing at least a Mythic Plus is I'm focusing on, obviously, my survivability, be it effective HP and cooldowns. And then I'm focusing on healing, doing a lot of healing to myself and my party, because as a Protection Paladin, you can do a ridiculous amount of healing, especially to people when they take a lot of damage. And there are talents that buff that through the roof that you do have access to. So I'm focusing on survivability, I'm focusing on healing my party. Then the third priority is obviously utility. Dispels, interrupts, freedoms, protection, etc. The least important of all the Protection Paladin priorities is damage. Again, you should focus on doing damage as much as you can, but you should keep your party alive, you should give them the breathing room. Keeping your party up is more important than you might think, because it's not just keeping them alive, it's also reducing the stress they're feeling and reducing the stress that the healer is feeling, allowing the healer the opportunity to do damage. I do think it's a bit of a silly meta where tanks are expected to heal and healers are expected to be damage dealers, but this is where World of Warcraft is right now. Now, for my part, I do enjoy having this kind of healing power on myself, because in pugs at least, it makes me far less reliant on the healers. Like, I know in a lot of situations, and I've done every mythic 0, I'm 370 item level, gotten gear from all of them. In a lot of situations, you can rely on just your own personal healing to keep yourself alive from a lot of damage. And in a lot of situations, you can reduce the stress on the healer, especially when it's very critical. So that's the mentality I would have playing as a Protection Paladin, focusing on survivability, focusing on healing, focusing on utility, less so on damage. And with that in mind, let's talk about talents, because the talents you choose will determine how your playstyle is, because they do have a major impact on your playstyle. Now, these are the talents I've chosen, but I'm just going to reset the tree and spend the talent points to give you guys an idea. Now, as a Protection Paladin, you're going to start with Lay on Hands and Aura of the Resolute for free. You want to get Hammer of Wrath, you want to get Aura of Swift Vengeance, Blessing of Freedom, Fist of Justice. Pretty self-explanatory. Hammer of Wrath, pretty useful, generates 1 holy power when you're using Avenging Wrath, if you have a talent to allow you to use it during Avenging Wrath. Blessing of Freedom, of course, removes effects. Fist of Justice reduces the cooldown. Each holy power spent reduces the remaining cooldown on Hammer of Justice by 2 seconds, so giving you a lot more stuns. And it's important to get this, not just because of the effect it gives, not because of the effect of Greater Judgment, but because you need to get Greater Judgment to unlock Rebuke and get access to that interrupt. Though you need to spend 8 points at the very least over here to do so. Now, you would also want to get Cleanse. For that, you either need to pick Repentance or Blinding Light. It doesn't matter what you choose. Depends on the situation. Repentance can be better in certain situations where you need to CC. One mob that can be very dangerous. Blinding Light is better in groups. And Cleanse, of course, for the Dispel purposes. You want to get Divine Steed. You want to get Rebuke. Divine Steed for the movement ability, mobility benefit. And, of course, Cavalier to have 2 charges, though it's not important in every situation, so this is something you could potentially drop in certain circumstances. Then you want to get Holy Aegis, because it gives you 4% armor and 4% crit, not irrelevant, and of course you want to get Avenging Wrath. Like, getting Cavalier is important because it allows you to skip getting Seasoned Warhorse or Seal of the Templar and just get Avenging Wrath through that. Seasoned Warhorse and Seal of the Templar can be useful in some situations, but I would not use them for the vast majority of raiding or mythic situations. Okay, now I need 6 points to unlock the bottom tier of talents. Now I'm going to get Blessing of Sacrifice and Blessing of Protection. That immunity shield with protection. The damage reduction of Blessing Sacrifice you can give on a party member when they're going to be taking a significant amount of damage. 4 points left. You want to get After Image. Now, After Image is great because what it does is after you're spending 20 holy power, your next Word of Glory echoes a nearby ally at 30% effectiveness. Now, here's something you need to know about Word of Glory. You don't want to just use it when you get free holy powers. You don't want to use it like this, for instance. You want for a party member to get low HP, let's say 50%, 60%, take some damage, and then use it because you want to benefit from Hand of the Protector. So a Word of Glory can generate a significant amount of healing in its own right by default. With Hand of the Protector, you can take a person like at 1% HP and heal them up to full. Just in theory. You shouldn't use it when they're that low, of course. That's playing a very risky game. But let's say 50%, you're going to top them off, and then you're going to get the After Image effect. Very, very useful to have this talent. Now, of other effects, you should get Unbreakable Spirit. Not for the benefit, but because it unlocks Holy Avenger later on. You don't necessarily care about these 2 talents, because reducing the cooldown of protection and spell warding, or improving sacrifice cooldown, or giving recompense, not very useful in every situation, can be situationally good though. Seal of Reprisal, 5% increased damage, 10% increased damage for 2 talent points. Not worth it from my perspective, because when we're thinking about damage, Blessed Hammer is not what's going to generate the most damage for you. It's not an ability you necessarily want to focus on. So 2 talent points, what should you get? Well, I think getting Judgment of Light can be worth it. Like, you do need to spend these talents, right? You do need to spend these talents. And I think out of the choices, I would get Judgment of Light. I would not bother with Golden Path, and I would not necessarily bother with Seal of Mercy. Golden Path on its own feels very useless, unless you were to run with like 5, with a group of 5 melee, basically, a melee healer and 3 melee DPS. Seal of Mercy could be nice in certain situations, but I don't think it's worth the talent points, just my perspective. So instead of spending 3 talent points, you're better off getting a point in Touch of Light. Because guess what? Your spells and ability have a chance to cause your target to erupt in a blinding light that either deals damage or heals an ally for HP. So I think that's better than Incandescence, which gives your Consecration a chance to do a lot of damage in an AoE. Healing is more important than damage, so Touch of Light it is. And that's unlocked the final tree. There's, like, if I want to change anything up here, right, I don't change from stuff, I don't take points from down here, I change from the decisions I've made over here. Just something for people to know. Like, for instance, if I want to drop After Image to get Golden Path, just as an example, I do that. I don't drop something from down here for something up here. That's a bad idea as far as I see it. Now, of the talents, of the bottom talents in the general tree, I would get Obduracy. 2% speed and avoidance is not necessarily worth it, but it unlocks both Seal of the Crusader and Seal of Alcatraz. Now, you should get Holy Avenger. Divine Purpose could be great. Let's say in a very long sustained fight could be pretty nice, I'm not gonna lie. But I think Holy Avenger is better in most situations, especially when it comes to burst damage, requirements of burst damage, burst healing. So I would take Holy Avenger the vast majority of times. Get used to the idea that you're going to need a lot of keybinds for just the cooldowns you have. Maybe some macros people can make. So Holy Avenger. I would also pick up Aspiration of Divinity, because it's going to give you, let's say, 6% strength, give or take, with this, keeping this up. I believe like that's what you're really looking at over there, because Blessed Hammer has free charges. Right? Anyway, that leaves you with some choices here. Between the Seal of Might and Seal of Alcatraz, I would go with Seal of Alcatraz, because Seal of Might is just during Avenging Wrath, where Seal of Alcatraz is permanent, and Haste in general is, from my view, better than Mastery. Now, your Mastery, let's talk about this a bit, because this is going to be important with regards to your talent choice. Your Mastery is significant, but what it does is increases your block chance, reduces the damage taken while in Consecration, so you're almost always going to want to be in Consecration as a Paladin, in your own Consecration. And you have a chance equal to your block chance to reduce your damage taken from dots, basically. Can be really great. There were certainly some mythic pluses in Shadowlands where enemies would put dots that would do an enormous amount of damage, so being able to reduce that is pretty significant. You do want to get either Sanctified Wrath or Seraphim. What should you choose? Personally, I preferred Sanctified Wrath. The reason I prefer Sanctified Wrath is it makes it far easier during an Avenging Wrath to get free Holy Power, right? Because you only need to do a Judgment and a Blessed Hammer, or a Judgment and a Hammer of Wrath to get to those free Holy Power points that you need. Seraphim can be nice, however, I'm not going to lie about that. Can be nice to get Haste, Critical Strike, and Versatility, and 8% Mastery, not going to lie. But I do prefer having Sanctified Wrath. Personal choice, obviously you can change it. These kind of talents are just like whatever you prefer using. Won't affect the rest of your talent tree. Then Seal of the Crusader. Though this is something you could drop. But your attacks have a chance to cause your target to take a 6% increased holy damage for 5 seconds. Now, it would be great to pair it with Zealot's Paragon, but you don't have the talent points for it. Because you have 2 talent points left, and it's better to get something else. That's kind of the issue over here. Though you could argue, well, if you're not going to get Zealot's Paragon, why not spend the points elsewhere, right? Well, I think, what other choices do you have? The only one that would be even remotely worth it would be Seal of Alcatraz. And while I wouldn't diminish the value of Seal of Alcatraz, I don't necessarily think it's as valuable. You're not going to struggle getting a lot of holy power. In fact, holy power generation is very, very easy in Dragonflight. So just getting a 10% chance to reduce the holy power cost of Word of Glory and Shield Righteous, I don't necessarily think it's worth it, as opposed to 6% damage for your target to take this 6% increase holy damage. That's my view, at least. Though, honestly, it doesn't really matter. Seal of Crusader doesn't really matter. Seal of Alcatraz. You could instead spend the points like this in Seal of Mercy and Golden Path, but not necessarily too fond of it. But you do have some choices over here. Or you could spend the points in Improved Blessing of Protection and Recompense or Sacrifice of Just. But the reason you're not taking Zealot's Paragon is because you want to get of Dusk at Dawn and the upgraded version, Seal of Order. Now, here's the thing. Blessing of Dusk will be something you're going to have very easily, almost 100% of the time. The only time when you don't have Seal of Dusk is if you pop Holy Avenger and you start generating, and you're like in this kind of loop where you're at a 5 or 2. My advice when it comes to using Holy Avenger then is just like pop it when you have 0 holy power. Get free with 1 cast of Blessed Hammer or Judgment. Use and do this twice. Get free 2 times. That should be a couple of seconds. And then go for 5 to get Blessing of Dawn. That's something that will ensure that Blessing of Dusk won't drop off. Blessing of Dawn may require some effort, some getting used to. But although I wasn't too fond of using this as a legendary item ability in challenge, having played with this talent in Dragonflight, I can tell you it's not really much of a hassle. You just get used to the idea that you will be spending, you just want to get to 5 holy power points, right? So when you reach 5 holy power, you get Blessing of Dawn. When you reach 0 holy power, you get Blessing of Dusk. And you can have both of them at the same time. Now, Blessing of Dawn gives you increased healing, and holy power spending abilities deal 8% additional increased damage and healing. Like, basically, Dawn is damage, Dusk is damage reduction. Dusk reduces damage taken by 4% and 10% armor. Dusk alone would be worth it. But here's the thing. Seal of Order, what it does, when you have Blessing of Dawn active, you deal 8% increased damage and healing. And in Dusk, you get that 10% armor reduction. Like, I hate one of the things about the tooltips, because the tooltips here in the talent tree are reflective of the talents you're already spending. Even if you reset it, it's not going to show them by default. But yeah, the armor of Dusk, like Dusk by default just reduces damage taken by 4%. Already very significant. But Seal of Order, 10% armor, and your holy power generating abilities cool down 10% faster. So that means Blessed Hammer and Judgment have a cooldown reduction. And that's worth far more than Zealot's Paragon. Now, Zealot's Paragon can be great because it increases the duration of Sentinel. Just to look at Sentinel very quickly, what it does, it puts a bunch of stacks on yourself that gives you a significant damage reduction benefit and HP benefit, right? But it goes down every second. The way you keep it going, though, is you spend Holy Power. That's by default. Now, what this does is increases the duration of Sentinel for every Hammer of Wrath and Judgment. But while Sentinel is great, and while increasing its duration is good, the armor and other effects are better. And There's no way to get all these free talent points. Believe me, if there was a way, I would do it. And I don't think throwing away Sanctified Wrath is either worth it, though. You could, if you so desire. Like, you could throw away Sanctified Wrath for Zealot's Paragon. Personally, I don't think that's a decision worth making, because yes, the increased duration of Sentinel is great, but so is getting that extra holy power really significant. I guess the way to view this, the decision here is you can either get selfish benefit, really, with Zealot's Paragon that benefits yourself, because it increases your damage reduction and HP, or with Sanctified Wrath, what you're really doing is you're generating more holy power, means more Word of Glory on your party, more healing. That's the way I'd view that decision. And same with Seal of Order, like Seal of Order versus Zealot's Paragon, because these are the kind of decisions. What two talents do you want to use over here? And I think these two are the better choices. My personal perspective, obviously, if you just wanted to increase your HP, getting Zealot's Paragon to keep Sentinel up for longer would be the superior choice. Now, Hallowed Ground, Seal of Reprisal, not worth taking. Golden Path, I'm not particularly impressed by the amount of healing. As I've stated, 90% of the healing, when I'm doing a lot of healing, I'm not doing it with other talents. I'm doing it for Word of Glory. This would be like 4 or 5% of your healing at most, if even that. Like, Judgment of Light is something like 5% of your healing, and it's not reliant on people standing in consecration. It's just reliant on people attacking the target. So this is the general Paladin build. Let's talk about protection. Now, in protection, obviously, some things you're going to take. Avenger Shield, Blessed Hammer. I would recommend using Blessed Hammer. I didn't really use Blessed Hammer, but when it comes to Dragonflight, you get the choice between Hammer of Righteous and Blessed Hammer. Yeah, go for Blessed Hammer. And get Holy Shield. And get Holy Shield over there. Because it will increase your block chance, but more crucially and far more importantly, it will give you a chance to block spells. Now, a 50% chance to block spells and significantly reduce their damage is a pretty vital ability, especially in Mythic Plus. And going into that same vein, you might as well pick Consecrated Ground while you're at it and eventually get Sanctuary. Or you could get improved Holy Shield if you're dealing with a lot of magical spells, but you still need to get some points there. Now over here you have a choice between Inner Light or Redoubt. Now Inner Light gives you a 10% block chance and deals damage. That's nice. If we look at block, it reduces the attack by 35% in my case. For an evenly matched enemy, so what, it's 30% or something along those lines for a higher level enemy, but still. Could be useful having that block chance, but then you also have Redoubt. It's a choice, doesn't affect the rest of your talent build, it's a choice. For my part, I personally prefer Redoubt, but I wouldn't sneeze at Inner Light either. The damage effect of Inner Light is not something I'd care about, to be quite honest, but yeah, 6% stamina and strength. Pretty useful. Either way, you want to get this, and then you get Grand Crusader and Shining Light. Now, Shining Light, essential. Grand Crusader, essential. It's Shining Light that really helps you out, because it allows you to do a lot of Shield of Righteousness and get a lot of free Word of Glories casts off for free, for no holy power. So pretty essential. Now, Grand Crusader gives you a chance when you avoid a melee attack or use Blessed Hammer to reset the cooldown of Avenging Shield. Now, I would not improve Grand Crusader because you can improve it to 20% with improved Inspiring Vanguard. I don't think that's worth it. And just 2% strength, not worth the talent point. There's things that are better spent with that talent point. Talent points can feel a bit limiting in the protection tree, I'll tell you that much. Ardent Defender, very important. Damage reduction cooldown, and prevents you from dying instead of healing you if you were to die. Barricade of Fate gives you a block chance when you're using Avenger Shield, and you'll be using quite a lot of Avenger Shields with Grand Crusader and Mythic Plus in general. So 10% block chance for that. Of course, you can increase it even further when with Inner Light if you so desire. Now, these two talents, you could use them, but let me be blunt. Consecrated by Flame is kind of pointless. Consecration already lasts a decent amount of time, and generally speaking, because there's a lot of movement in Mythic Plus, you'll be casting it a lot, and even when you're standing still in like a raid environment, you're not going to have a problem finding a window to cast Consecration. So the duration is meaningless. The damage increase, not important as far as I see it. What about Crusader's Resolve or Strength in Adversity? Crusader's Resolve could be great for the damage reduction, except you can get 5% damage reduction for while you're standing Consecration, as opposed to a stacking buff that requires you to hit free enemies with Avenger Shield, because this may not work on certain enemies like single entities or bosses, like single enemies or bosses. So generally speaking, I would argue Sanctuary, that also gives you the choice of improved Holy Shield, is probably your better bet, your better choice. Now, one of the things you want to do here is also get Bulwark by Order, especially for Mythic Plus, but I wouldn't sneeze at it even for raids. So Avenger Shield also shields you for 8 seconds, absorbing 50% as much damage as it dealt. So you want to increase the damage of Avenger Shield to improve it. Another thing is Tears Enforcer. Now, I would not spend more than 1 point in Tears Enforcer. Yes, you can double the damage. The problem is you just don't have the talent points, and there's more useful stuff elsewhere. As great as Bulwark of Order is in Mythic Plus in particular, you do need to get talent points elsewhere. One of the things to talk about talents, by the way, is the choice over here between Consecrate the Ground and Improved Land Hands. For Mythic Plus, given the meta of Shadowlands, which I expect to repeat itself in Dragonflight, where kite tanking was very crucial, Consecrate the Ground is very important. And having a larger Consecration is pretty useful. Lots of movement, right? You want to stay in Consecration for your Mastery effect and for other reasons as well. So having that, pretty useful, actually allows you to cast fewer Consecrations. The choice, by the way, here is between taking these two over here or taking these two. You want to take the stuff in the middle, or at least some of the stuff in the middle. Would I bother with this talent? If you need Blessing of Spell Wording, yes. If not, don't. Now, here you get the choice between Avenger's Wrath Might and Sentinel. For survivability purposes, Sentinel blows it out of the water. Though 20% crit chance is nothing to sneeze at, but yeah, Sentinel is the better choice. And then you want to get Light of the Titans, heal over time effect on Word of Glory, and that also will unlock Hand of the Protector, one of the most important talents you can have, because it increases your Word of Glory healing proportional to the missing health on your target. Which means you can top yourself off with, look at the HP I have 320k HP, I can do this kind of healing in a single cast if I time it right. And then you want to get Strength of Conviction to increase the healing of Word of Glory by 20% while you're standing in Consecration. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of standing in Consecration, and I'd argue that's one of the things you got to get used to the most. It is important that you're standing in your own Consecration. Now, thankfully, Consecration does have a fairly fast cooldown, but it also, by the way, ties into your stat priority for your character because, yeah, haste is more important than ever, and also mastery is very important. Like, stat-wise, yeah, strength, stamina, armor for main stats, haste and mastery for secondary stats. Everything else is, like, far less important. You don't want to get Guardian of Ancient Kings. You also want to get Relentless Inquisitor to unlock Bastion of Light. Now, you could argue that you can drop Relentless Inquisitor for Tears Enforcer, but it's still 3% haste that you can get. I do this like a lot of the stacking buffs that Paladins have, because it just ends up in a silly situation where you have a ridiculous number of cooldowns and a ridiculous number of stacking buffs. You can't track it all of it. Now, you should assume that Relentless Inquisitor, as long as you're using your abilities as often as possible, is going to stay up, though it may not be 100% of the time. So, Bastion of Light for the free casts. Pretty useful, very useful, very important. And so is Crusader's Judgment for the 2 charges of Judgment, very important talent. And then I would ignore Ufer's Council, because reducing the cooldown of Lay on Hands, Divine Shield, and Blessing of Protection is not too important, unless you're using Divine Shield to Divine Shield in conjunction with Final Stand. I personally don't, but if you were to use them, could be potentially good. You want to get Eye of Tyr, and you want to get Faith's Armor, as well as Bulwark of Righteous Fury. Not for the damage necessarily, but rather for the increase in radius of on the Shield of Righteous. Because the increased radius will allow you to do better AoE threat, will allow you to reach more enemies faster, very important for pulling. This is the reason you also get Tyr's Enforcer for the pulling ability. Now I'm left with 4 points. 1 point I would get in Gift of the Golden Valkyr. I would not necessarily get 2 of these, because getting 2 of these just reduces the cooldown of Guardian of Ancient Kings by a further 0.5 seconds every time you hit an enemy with Avenger Shield. 1 point is great because it will trigger Guardian of Ancient Kings automatically every 45 seconds if you drop below 30% HP, so that's good. Now I'm left with 3 points. What do you choose with the last 3 points? Here's what I will argue when it comes to that. When it comes to those kind of decisions. You can, and I've kind of ended up in a bad situation here, right? Because I don't have the points to spend to get that unless I drop this, right? Unless I drop something over here, which is a bit of a shame. I guess one of the things I'm going to no, I can't drop that because then I would have to, okay. So the one thing I am going to drop is Sanctuary. If I want the increased, the reduced cooldown on Divine Toll. Now this is one particular choice. But of course you're losing that 5% damage reduction, but you're still maintaining the movement speed reduction over there. I actually thought I had enough talent points, but I guess I was wrong when it comes to that. Where did I go wrong? One of the things you could drop, of course, is Bulwark of Righteous Fury. If you so desired, you could potentially live without it. 5% damage reduction is nothing to sneeze about. Getting Divine Toll and getting a Divine Toll with a lower cooldown is pretty significant. Though, of course, it also Quickened Invocation also reduces the cooldown of Seraphim. I'm not working with Seraphim here. I don't want to use Seraphim. But obviously this would be better if I was using Seraphim. But Divine Toll is something you want to have regardless. But you need to spend 2 points in either Righteous Protector or 2 points in Faith in the Light. Now I prefer Righteous Protector, right? I mean, this is the reason why the Gift of the Golden Valkyr is a pointless is pointless to spend 2 talent points in there, because you're gonna get the effect either way. So that's one particular choice, and this is what I would use as a talent build personally. This is the talent build I'm going to link. I'm going to share in the description of the video. Now, it could be great getting this or getting this, but I would need to make some sacrifices for the sake of that I'm not necessarily willing to make. 5% damage reduction is a lot, however, and if I were in situations where I would be taking a lot of damage and AoE tanking is less significant, I would drop Bulwark of Righteous Fury for the sake of Sanctuary. That would be my decision. Now, other decisions that you do have available here. Well, remember this talent, Bulwark of Order, because you then have Moment of Glory. Now, Moment of Glory basically does this. For the next 15 seconds, you generate an Absorb Shield for 20% of all damage you deal, and Avenger Shield damage is increased by 20%, and cooldown? Okay, that's a bit of a tooltip issue, but its cooldown is reduced by 75%. Now, this could be great for boss tanking, obviously far better than getting Divine Toll. So if I'm doing raid boss tanking, one of the things I would do, and I'm not dealing with a lot of ads, or very few of them, I would drop these 2 points, maybe even a point over here. Maybe both points over there, actually. Or all of these, and instead get Moment of Glory, for the sake of survivability, just from a survival perspective. And it would obviously improve the damage there. But for general purpose tanking, this is what I would use. What switch between Bulwark of Righteous Fury and Sanctuary, dependent on the situation you're facing. And that's all there is to it. UI-wise, I personally use 2 things. I have a weak aura in the middle that shows me these cooldowns, abilities, all that. It's not perfect, it needs some work. And then I use LVI. I'll make a paste bin for both of these profiles, link them over there. You can check them out, you can use them. And that's all there is to say. Costin signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.